Sam's Throne. Bear attack. 2024. On September 13, 2024, 60-year-old Max Thomas stood at his campsite in Arkansas's Ozark National Forest and took a photograph of a black bear moving nearby. The image showed a routine wildlife encounter in a popular recreation area. Within 2 days, Thomas would be dead, making the incident the first fatal bear attack in Arkansas in more than a century. Thomas was camping alone at Sam's Throne Recreation Area, a remote but frequently visited site known for rock climbing and dispersed camping. The area is home to a growing population of black bears that often move through campsites, particularly during early fall when natural food sources become scarce. After sending the photograph to family members, Thomas stopped responding to messages. When his family could not reach him, his son contacted the Newton County Sheriff's Office and requested a welfare check on October 2nd. A deputy located Thomas's vehicle parked near the campsite. The campsite itself showed signs of disturbance, including displaced gear and drag marks leading away from the sleeping area. Several yards into the nearby woods, Thomas's body was discovered. Investigators determined that Thomas had been sleeping outdoors on a cot rather than inside a tent. His injuries were consistent with a large animal attack. The Arkansas State Crime Lab later ruled the cause of death as animal mauling, with the manner of death classified as accidental. Wildlife officials believed the animal involved was a black bear. Early assessments suggested it may have been a juvenile male, though investigators noted that confirmation required DNA analysis. Samples were collected from the victim and the scene. Following the discovery, Sam's Throne Recreation Area was temporarily closed, while authorities searched for the bear and monitored activity in the area. Wildlife officers increased patrols and advised the public to avoid the site until the investigation was complete. The attack shocked state wildlife officials, as Arkansas had not recorded a fatal bear attack since 1892. The incident became only the second documented fatal bear attack in the state's history. Soda Butte Campground Grizzly Attack, 2010. On the night of July 28, 2010, Kevin Kammer zipped himself into his tent at Soda Butte Campground near Yellowstone National Park, settling in for the night in one of the most remote sites in the area. The campground was quiet, and nearby campers were already asleep. Before morning, Kammer would be killed in a rare predatory grizzly bear attack that unfolded without witnesses. Kammer, a resident of Grand Rapids, Michigan, was camping at a site positioned roughly 60 yards from the nearest occupied campsite. Earlier that evening, a female grizzly bear accompanied by 3 yearling cubs had attacked 2 campers downstream along Soda Butte Creek, leaving them seriously injured. Wildlife officials were not yet aware that the bear continued moving through the area. Sometime after midnight, the grizzly approached Kammer's isolated campsite. With darkness and the sound of the nearby creek masking movement, Kammer had little warning. The bear pulled him from his tent by the head and shoulders. He suffered fatal injuries within a few feet of the tent entrance. No one nearby heard or saw the attack. For several hours, Kammer's body remained undiscovered while other campers slept. Later that night, a Park County Sheriff's deputy arrived at the campground to evacuate visitors following reports of earlier bear attacks. During the evacuation, Kammer's body was found near his tent. Wildlife officials examined the scene and determined that the attack was predatory rather than defensive. Evidence indicated the bear was attempting to prey on humans rather than reacting to a perceived threat. Biologists collected hair and other material for DNA analysis. A culvert trap was set near the campsite, only a short distance from where Kammer was killed. By the evening of July 29th, the adult grizzly returned to the area and entered the trap. Within hours, all 3 cubs were also captured. DNA testing confirmed the trapped bear was responsible for the attacks. The adult bear was euthanized. The cubs were transferred to captivity, where they would remain permanently. The incident became one of the most closely studied fatal bear attacks in the Yellowstone region. Uluru Dingo Attack in Australia, 1980. On August 17, 1980, 9-week-old Azaria Chamberlain was placed inside a tent at a family campsite near Uluru, in Australia's Northern Territory, while her parents prepared for the night nearby. The campground was quiet, and the evening routine was nearly finished. Less than an hour later, Azaria would vanish from the tent, beginning one of the most closely scrutinized camping deaths in Australian history. Azaria was camping with her parents, Michael and Lindy Chamberlain, and her two older brothers near Ayers Rock, later renamed Uluru. The area was known to be inhabited by dingoes, which frequently moved through campgrounds in search of food scraps. At the time, interactions between dingoes and campers were considered common, but generally non-aggressive. At approximately 10 p.m., Lindy Chamberlain went to check on the children. Upon reaching the tent, she discovered that Azaria was missing. Lindy reported seeing a dingo near the tent and stated that the animal had taken the infant. Other campers were alerted, and a search began immediately. Search efforts continued throughout the night. Bloodstains were found inside the tent, and torn clothing belonging to Azaria was later recovered in the surrounding area. Despite extensive searching, Azaria was not found alive. Initial investigations questioned whether a dingo attack was responsible. Attention soon shifted toward the parents, particularly Lindy Chamberlain. In 1982, she was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment, while Michael Chamberlain received a suspended sentence. The case generated widespread public debate and international attention. Over the following years, additional evidence emerged, including documented dingo attacks on humans and the discovery of Azaria's clothing near a dingo den. In 1986, Lindy Chamberlain was released from prison after serving 4 years. In 2012, a coroner officially ruled that Azaria Chamberlain died as a result of a dingo attack. The case led to significant changes in campsite safety practices, wildlife management, and public awareness of risks associated with camping in dingo habitats. Arkansas flash flood, 2010. On June 11, 2010, 48-year-old Tracy Hubbard went to sleep beside the Little Missouri River in Arkansas, believing she was safely camped for the night. The river was calm, the air was still, and there were no storm warnings at the campground. Less than 2 hours later, she would be awakened by water rushing through her campsite as a flash flood surged into the valley without warning, turning the campground into one of the deadliest flood sites in United States camping history. Hubbard was staying at the Albert Pike Recreation Area, a campground located in a narrow river valley within the Ouachita Mountains. Earlier that evening, conditions at the campground appeared normal. Light rain had fallen intermittently, but nothing suggested immediate danger. Unknown to campers, heavy rainfall was occurring miles upstream, funneling rapidly into the Little Missouri River and its tributaries. Shortly after 1:30 in the morning, water began rising suddenly inside the campground. Hubbard awoke to the sound of rushing water as floodwaters entered her campsite. Within minutes, the river overflowed its banks. Water levels rose several feet per hour, leaving little time to respond. As the current strengthened, tents, vehicles, and camper vans were swept from their positions. Roads were submerged and debris filled the valley. Hubbard attempted to escape as the water continued rising, but visibility was limited by darkness and fast-moving debris. In the chaos, she was separated from others nearby as the flood overtook the area. The river eventually rose as much as 20 feet above normal levels. Cabins were destroyed, asphalt was torn from roadways, and vehicles were carried downstream. Emergency responders began rescue operations once conditions allowed, pulling survivors from trees and debris throughout the valley. Despite search efforts, Hubbard was later found deceased. At least 16 people were killed in the flood, including children. The campground suffered extensive damage, and recovery operations continued for days due to the scale of destruction and difficult terrain. The Albert Pike flood became one of the deadliest campground flash floods ever recorded in the United States. Teton Wilderness Lightning Strike, 2022. On August 16, 2022, 22-year-old John Jack Murphy lay inside his tent near Enos Lake in Wyoming's Teton Wilderness, listening as distant thunder echoed through the mountains. The campsite was quiet, and the group had already settled in for the evening. Less than half an hour later, a lightning strike would pass through the ground beneath his tent, causing fatal injuries in a remote area more than 12 miles from the nearest trailhead. Murphy was participating in a national outdoor leadership school course designed to teach backcountry travel and outdoor skills. He was one of 14 students accompanied by 3 instructors. The group had established camp near Enos Lake at an elevation of approximately 7,800 feet. During the early evening, thunderstorms began moving through the region. As the storms intensified, lightning activity increased around the campsite. Murphy was inside his tent when a lightning strike occurred at approximately 6:25 p.m. Investigators later determined that the lightning either struck nearby or hit the ground close to the tent, sending electrical current through the earth. The electrical charge traveled through Murphy's body, causing immediate cardiac arrest. Another student positioned roughly 25 yards away was also injured, likely by the same ground current. Tents and camping equipment offered no protection from the electrical discharge, Instructors immediately began life-saving chest compressions while emergency services were contacted. Due to the remote location and worsening weather, rescue efforts were challenging. Teton County Search and Rescue dispatched a helicopter to the area once conditions allowed. Despite continuous resuscitation efforts by instructors and later by rescue personnel, Murphy could not be revived. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The injured student was airlifted to a hospital and later released. Because of darkness and continued storm activity, 2 search and rescue volunteers remained overnight with the group. The following morning, additional evacuations were conducted for participants unable to hike out due to physical and emotional strain. The county coroner later confirmed the cause of death as lightning strike.